Welcome to Uncaged. Today we're speaking with Alan Lee. Alan, I think, has one of the coolest jobs. He gets to play around with cool digital content. He is the COO and co-founder of a fabulous company called Collab Asia. We'll talk more about the Collab Asia story, but the company really is taking creators, brands, and platforms and moving them into that digital world, the digital era, digital content, and I'd say at this point, pushing it to the next level. So I'm excited to talk about that in a second. But before we get there, Alan, tell us a little bit about you and your career.
Sure. Thanks, Brent. So I started my career as a banker, which, few apologies there, but yeah, I started in the M&A group of one of the top shops at the time in New York. And there's one particular meeting that I remember where, it took a long conference table. It was a debt deal where I think we were issuing bonds. And as always, there's like a long line of bankers on one side of the table. So you have the debt capital group, the M&A group, you have the industry coverage group, and so on. And we're all there in our suits, just waiting. It's early morning. We probably had not slept the night before. As always, as a banker, you're just tired and haggard. And then in strolls the founder of the company, looking tanned and well rested, wearing casual clothes. He's the only guy on the other side of the table. And I remember thinking to myself, man, how do I get to that side of the table? So and I had already kind of thought about, entrepreneurship. I mean, that was kind of like a fantasy that I had when I was in college, but, that kind of experience, went a long way towards cementing that goal for me. So, flash forward 20 years later, and Ben, I think, as a fellow founder, we're not tan and well rested. In fact, we are in worse shape than most of the other bankers. But you don't know that as a junior banker, as a young guy with stars in my eyes. I didn't know the dark side of that. But anyway, that's how I got into entrepreneurship, and that's where I am now. So from banking, I went to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think it's a great story. I mean, certainly I can share that gray hairs on my chinny chin are testament to those entrepreneurial pains. But, the reality is those tables that you are outlining are the largest boardroom tables you can ever imagine. They just go, it seems like they're endless. And so when you say that you are all on one side, I know exactly that room that you are sitting in.
Yeah.
And what a moment that must have been. But Alan, now you have co-founded Collab Asia. And Collab Asia is a really exciting company. Tell us a little bit about what you and the team are up to.
Yeah, definitely. So 7 years. So in 2017, my co-founder and I we're both Korean Americans from Los Angeles. Okay, meaning we're Asian ethnically, but we have actually never lived in Asia before. But we're working in the industry, in the entertainment media industry in Los Angeles. And Eugene was, my co-founder was running the Asian division of a US company called Collab Inc., which you know. And he and I kind of saw the growth that was happening in Asia. And we noticed that everything that happened in the States in terms of the creator economy, digital media, all that stuff happened in Asia as well, with about a 2-year lag. And we're like, wow, what if we were able to take our knowledge from the US and apply it to Asia? And so, based on that thesis, we spun off the Asian division and, hence Collab Asia. And we raised some venture capital money and we basically moved to Asia for the first time. So he went to Korea, I went to Japan. And at the time, Korea and Japan were our main markets. And here we are 6.5 years later, and we are the largest digital content distributor of our kind. We generate about 18 billion views on YouTube monthly alone. And then if you include the other platforms like TikTok and stuff like that, it just goes up from there. We have around 1,500 YouTube channels in our network. So what we do is we manage YouTube channels, and those YouTube channels could be created by a teenager in their bedroom, or it could be managed by the largest companies in the world, including K-pop record labels, animation studios from Japan, so on and so forth. For us, a content creator is a content creator. And for us, what we want to do is help them maximize their earnings on platforms like YouTube. So once we built the scale, commanding the kind of audiences and eyeballs, then we started reaching out to brands and advertisers to help them use our network to get
Yeah.
their message.
Amazing. I mean, I am very familiar with your sister company, Collab, and have loved to see them grow and the work that they've done in the North American market. And as I alluded to you, Alan, I've noticed on the socials some of the Collab Asia stuff popping in,
Yeah.
and it's spectacular. And I think that anyone who has spent any time in Asia will know that digital content there, not only did it grow in Asia, but it has really just dramatically taken on a whole nother
Yeah.
level across the region. And so I think that's a testament to the work that you and your team have been doing. But I mean, clearly, I'd say the digital content space constantly changes, constantly is evolving. It really is kind of at the forefront of trends as we see it in content in
Mhm.
general. What are you seeing right now that is some of the key trends that you're seeing that are popping in the digital content space?
It is such an interesting time in the market right now, as I'm sure you're aware because you're from the industry. But even for the casual user of these platforms, uh, I think probably the greatest story in the last couple of years is the just battle between short form content and long form content. And to be clear, the line that separates short form to long form has dramatically changed in the last couple of years. So we used to think short form content was anything less than 30 minutes. Not anymore, right? With TikTok, it's become 15 seconds or even shorter. And what's
Mm,
happened in the last couple of years is for a while, the large platforms, which were, coincidentally all American. So Meta, Google, YouTube, all these guys
yeah,
seem to be getting into a really good groove. They seem to have kind of locked up their markets. YouTube had skyrocketed and basically dominated all of video for all of the world until TikTok, almost out of
right.
nowhere, came out and really threatened everyone. They completely
Yeah,
disrupted the models for all these platforms. And so, what happened in the last couple of years, and we had a first seat, we had kind of like a front seat to this, was all the other platforms had to defend and react and respond. So YouTube came out with shorts, Instagram came out with reels. And for the last couple of years, it's been kind of a battle between these two sides of the table. What we're seeing now, though, is a return to kind of normalcy in the sense
mm,
that each side has figured out on their own that, hey, we're gonna kill each other if we're trying to compete on both of these spaces, right? TikTok, after having really dominated users and attention and stuff like that, YouTube and Instagram and Meta have successfully defended by rolling out their own shorts platforms. So it's kind of
yeah,
reached kind of a stasis. But at the
yeah,
same time, TikTok has realized, we think the greater ROI here is not competing on content monetization like the other platforms. They already have a really good head start. They have longer videos, anyways. They're going to be better at that kind of advertising generated stuff. What TikTok
yeah,
has done is said, actually, e-commerce is the future for us. And so, if you talk to a TikTok staff member, they'll tell you that there's actually two separate buildings in LA, for example. One of them is for TikTok, the content platform. The other is for TikTok shops, and the TikTok shops
yeah,
building is bigger. So I think social commerce, e-commerce, live commerce is going to be the way that TikTok is really emphasizing, which kind of takes the existing pressure off of the other platforms. So I feel like they've all
yeah,
each have kind of learned a lesson from each other and kind of are going back to what they know best. YouTube, for example, is going back to, we think, and this is all our our thoughts, but we think YouTube is going back to kind of emphasizing long form because that's what they're best at. So, for
yeah,
example, connected TV has gotten really big in the past year or so, and I feel like YouTube is really going after again the TV market and not as concerned about all the attrition that they were seeing from TikTok because again, I feel
mm.
like these platforms have kind of reached another kind of status quo for now.
Yeah, it's such a good overview that you just provided. And it's so true. Over the last several years, we saw the emergence of TikTok. And I would say that it was a content channel that kind of challenged all the other platforms on almost every level. The content quality itself was more enjoyable. The format was great. The speed and the technology that was being used to push out the video was superior. Like it was, I think, the lag that other platforms would have were non-existent on TikTok. I was very impressed with TikTok, and I certainly know that in the US there's so many concerns about privacy and data, et cetera.
Yeah.
But it's a very good point to outline that kind of sense of stasis now, stasis on the content side, and then the push into commerce. And again, I mean, I have to give TikTok some credit. I am not someone who would normally purchase things off of social channels, and I have purchased items off of TikTok Shop. I think one of the reasons is that they have figured out all those pain points that have driven customers crazy for years. It's so easy to buy, it's just so seamless. And so I think that's probably a good path for them, for sure. But I mean, let's kind of change gears a little bit and talk more about you. I mean, it's one thing to just be an entrepreneur and set up a business, but you've entered into the entertainment and content space. I mean, is this an area of childhood passion for you that has kind of emerged? Or tell me a little bit about, as I sometimes say, what gets you up in the morning? Why is it this that drives you?
Yeah, that's another interesting evolution that's occurring now. So you're right. Yeah, it is a childhood passion of mine, film. Okay, so what we know as film today, right? So when I was a banker, what you do as a banker is you can either stay in a product group or you can focus on an industry. And I'm like, well, I like film, so I might as well focus on the entertainment media space. And that's how in terms of career, that's how I ended up in the entertainment space. So I ended up working at Lionsgate Entertainment for a couple of years as well. And that's where I learned how to value content. And that's how I approached social media. To me, the issue with film and creative content in general back in the day was that it didn't lend itself well to data-driven analysis. The reason is there wasn't enough data to begin with. There was about 600, back in the day, there was about 600 films released per year in theaters. So if you were to run some type of regression analysis on 600 films, it's not very accurate. And the whole process of producing a film is extremely opaque. There's not a lot of transparency. You're not really able to figure out what the true profitability of these things are. So the whole industry didn't lend itself well to my strength, which is kind of financial analysis or data-driven analysis. The social media, but when you start to see the path of entertainment, it really starts going into social media. And so the next iteration of long form entertainment was web series, and then of course YouTube, and then now we're at places like TikTok. But along the way, we can no longer call these platforms like TikTok and Meta entertainment or media anymore. It's no longer just content. It's actually more self-expression. The whole idea of your digital identity goes way beyond the 4 to 6 hours that people used to spend on watching TV, right? It's now infiltrated every aspect of our life. So as someone who started in this industry because I loved entertainment, I find myself in a new world where, wow, we are way beyond leisure time spent by people. Now we are delving into replacements or substitutes for, person-to-person interaction, or trying to, establish your social value. All these things are now on the table, and it's wild to consider.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've seen also some of those ads where you apply new technologies like AI, and they're talking about AI friends and things like that you can have through these channels. I have no idea how that will develop over time, but certainly it's a moment. With that in mind, I mean, generative AI has taken the world, I'd say, by storm over the last year, at least as a topic. I mean, for a lot of us that work in the technology space, we've been playing around with generative AI for several years. But for, I'd say, the general business marketplace, they woke up to it last year. Tell me a little bit on what you're seeing across Asia in terms of how people are utilizing AI, as well as kind of considering it from a content perspective.
So for AI in particular, remember 3 years ago, Elon Musk was saying AI was gonna like destroy the world, right? Like that was a
Yeah.
legitimate concern. Flash forward to now, where you're using Gemini or OpenAI as a search tool, and it's like it can barely give you the answers that you want, right? So
Right.
I think we need to like, definitely manage our expectations, and a lot of the early thoughts about it were quite alarmist, but now we're kind of starting to figure out, oh, this is actually a really, really useful tool that is going to multiply and amplify the productivity of pretty much every industry. That I
Yeah.
definitely believe in, because that's what I'm seeing. In terms of Asia, so we've had a lot, we are working quite a bit with AI, as a company in the creative content space. Absolutely, we have to be on the forefront of it. So we have creators that are using AI. We ourselves are using AI as well. I'll give you one example, and this is about 9 months old, which is probably already outdated. But I remember I was trying to put together a list of the top influencers in all the markets, including China and the US, right? So if you were to sort all the influencers strictly by number of subscribers, and you sorted it worldwide, you would at the very top, you would have a really good mix of Chinese influencers. Obviously, they have the numbers. And then you have US influencers like Charlie D'Amelio, Kabi Lame, who's the biggest TikToker. Well, he's not American, but he's on an American platform. And then you have some Chinese influencers as well. And we're like, let's do something fun. Let's use AI to generate some images of all these influencers as Olympic athletes, right? Gold medal winners. I thought it'd be nice and fun to do that. So I used, Stable Diffusion to spit these images out. The American influencers or the Western influencers, easy peasy. Took a matter of seconds, and it was a very, very clear representation of their faces. When I
Hmm.
asked AI to generate an image of the top influencer in China, and mind you, this guy has more followers worldwide, well, mostly in China, obviously,
Yeah.
than the top TikTokers in the world. It was a generic face, and it didn't
Oh,
even look Asian. And I'm like, okay, there's a huge opportunity here. Obviously a lot of the AI platforms and the models that they have were created in the Western world. So
yeah.
that to me is a huge deficiency and a huge opportunity.
It's a great point. I mean, I've done some, doctoral work in the AI space, and certainly a lot of the early data that was pulled in comes from a relatively small set of publicly available or open sourced images, right? Open source videos. One that was in Stanford, in Palo Alto, in a coffee shop, and another one that was on the Duke University campus. And no surprise there that you're going to have some level of diversity, but perhaps not the level of
Mm.
diversity that's needed to be truly representative globally.
Yeah. So yeah, and this is not a finger pointing exercise. The developers that create this AI are going to look around the world around them. But
Mm.
us, for us sitting in Asia, and we do have two China offices. We're in Shenzhen. We're in Hong Kong. The business we do with mainland China is essentially importing, exporting content across the
Mm.
Chinese digital wall. Meaning, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, YouTube. Most of the platforms that we know of are not able to be used in China. They have their own
Right.
domestic platforms, right? Like Weibo, Bilibili,
Yeah.
and so on. So what we do is we take YouTubers in America that have audiences in China, and we create their channels in China for them. We monetize, we protect their copyright, all these things, and vice versa. There's a lot of Chinese influencers that end up on YouTube, so we help them protect their content and monetize. So we're clearly in that game, and so rather than this is not accusatory and saying, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
you guys are doing a bad job." I'm just saying there's a natural bias there that leaves a huge opportunity for companies there's so many AI companies. We partnered with a few already, and we're always telling them why compete against all these companies in America that are trying to service the same same clients? And by clients, I mean I think the true money opportunity here, business opportunity, are the brands, the commercial producers, and stuff like that, right? For them to be able to
Yeah.
generate really meaningful content that connects with audiences in a much more streamlined process is such a game changer. And for sure, there are people in China, Japan, Korea that are trying to do the same thing. So,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is, like, your stable diffusion model, which is open source and it's supposed to be global, is deficient there. So, yeah, we're working with, for example, an AI generation company. We own a lot of music catalog for YouTube. So we own
Hmm.
a really big K-pop library of mostly older hits. So,
Hmm.
for example, 90s K-pop, right? And there's not a lot of really good music videos for that. So using AI, we've created music videos to accompany that catalog, and we've thrown it up on YouTube, and it's getting a
Wow.
lot of hits. So those kind of things we're doing. But as I said before, it's really hard. The models don't include the K-pop stars that we know of, even though they have a really big presence in Korea, for example. So yeah, we're looking forward to the day when there are more companies doing that stuff, because we're not going to create the AI ourselves, but we are really big users of AI.
Well, early days, and clearly, I think you and the team are going to be the pioneers and test out some of these new areas and hopefully fix some of these problems. I always think of all of the early problems we had back in the day in like the dot-com era. And they
Yep,
all get solved, they all get pushed forward, we figure it out, and the
totally.
same thing is going to happen in the generative AI space. But here we are, 2024, Alan. That's a big year for a million reasons. It's the Olympics. So there's a couple of
Mm.
important things like elections going on around the world. But tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in the digital content space in 2024.
Yeah, 2024, as you said, AI is going to be a big part of it. I'll tell you what we're focusing on right now. So we spent the last 5 or 6 years, the first 6 years of our existence, focused on putting ourselves in the shoes of the creator. Because what we saw in Asia was this explosion of creativity enabled by broadband access and by platforms, essentially, right? So when Instagram hit Indonesia, for example, it just unleashed this wave of creativity by users, and that's how we were able to grow our business in Indonesia, by signing up these young kids that were suddenly making incredibly engaging content about their lives on Instagram. So we would sign them up, put them on YouTube, help them monetize, help them quit their jobs. A lot of them definitely quit their office jobs in order to become full-time creators. So that's been very gratifying. But for 2024, what we are doing now is stepping out of the shoes of the creator, because we've kind of built the scale that we need to do. Like we're the biggest YouTube MCN in Indonesia, for example. We're top 2 or 3 in
Hmm.
Korea and Japan. So we've kind of accomplished that. Now we have to step into the shoes of the advertiser. And what's happening in the digital content space in Asia in 2024, I believe, is not so much about content, because that's fine, right? Like K-pop is
Yeah.
doing fine. They don't need our help. What's happening now is the advertisers really need help in this market.
Yeah.
All the stuff that you noticed in America a few years back, for example, there's something called partner sales, which
Hmm.
allows companies on YouTube to directly sell their advertising. It's a very coveted ability to do that. There are a lot of companies doing it already in the States. Believe it or not, the list is very short in our markets, even in Japan and Korea, which are
Wow.
extremely developed. Yeah, Japan and Korea are extremely developed markets, but their advertising market is still, I would say, well, let me say for Japan, is still very much you think about the stranglehold that the TV networks had in America for a long time. Imagine
Yeah.
that times two in Japan, right? And you've lived
Yeah,
in
no,
Asia.
I'm
Yeah.
quite familiar. I actually used to work with Dentsu, so I
Oh,
know
nice.
the
Yeah.
Japanese market well. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very controlled market,
Mhm.
and so that's had some good positive impact as well as negative. So I
Mhm.
understand that on some of these areas, you might not see the same development path for sure.
Yeah, I mean, for
Yeah.
2024, for us, it's like now is a year that we're starting to see the cracks in the remember, like you go to someone like Dentsu and you start talking about digital, and they're like, well, why would I sell these ads on YouTube for $1 CPM? I'm making up the numbers when I could sell it for, $1 million on NHK or something, right? But of course they're realizing, oh my God, like our entire audience is on digital. They're no longer on
Yeah.
TV. We have to change. So we've already started to see that happen. In 2024 is the year that I think we can really capitalize on that. So I would say
Wow.
that's our focus right now.
That's exciting. Well, I mean, I'm very interested to see how things continue to develop, Alan, and certainly anyone that wants to know how the digital content, I'd say, ecosystem is going to evolve, you probably would be worth getting in touch with Alan Lee. Alan, if someone wanted to reach you and learn more about what Collab Asia is doing, where's the best place to find you?
Uh, I'm really active on LinkedIn, so you could see me at Allen ALLENW Lee. That's my handle on LinkedIn. I'm on X as well, not as active there, but yeah, I'm on all the platforms. So just type in my name, Allen W Lee, and you'll probably find me. But LinkedIn is good. Email is good as well.
Well, Alan, thank you so much. I mean, it's been fascinating to speak with you. Also, really to get, I'd say, a very clear perspective on where things stand in the digital content ecosystem in Asia. It was interesting, I think, to hear your perspective on how some channels are evolving, really kind of seeing themselves not as digital content, channels, but more as how should we say, expressive content commerce marketplaces. I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
have to come up with a good name for it.
yeah, we need one.
But but lots of good changes, and as we talked about there at the end, certainly it sounds like this could be a big year in terms of opening up some key markets to digital commerce and digital content in general, as it becomes as it already is, but continues to increase in importance for advertisers. So, Alan, thank you so much for being on the UNCAGED show today, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you, Pat. Had a great time.